Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third day, the final day, and the final session as well of the first ever RSPO North America Sustainable Palm Oil Dialogue. My name is Cameron Plese, and I'm the U.S. representative for the RSPO. So while we wait a few minutes for all of the other attendees to join us, you'll see a poll question on your screen. Please feel free to answer that while we wait for all the other attendees to join us, and we'll share those results before we begin. Those of you just joining us, welcome. You'll see a poll question on the screen. Please feel free to answer that while we wait for the other attendees to join us, and we'll be beginning shortly. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the third and final day of the RSPO North America Sustainable Palm Oil Dialogue and this final panel for the conference. My name is Cameron Plese, and I'm the U.S. representative for the RSPO. Thank you all for answering our poll question. It's exciting to see that a lot of you are somewhat familiar or very familiar with the role that zoos play, and some of you looks like you have a lot you can learn during this panel session, so I'm very excited to be able to introduce this session to all of you. So as I mentioned, this is the final session of our 3-day virtual conference that has hosted a series of panel sessions covering a wide range of important topics, all with a focus on how North American stakeholders can make an impact. I'm really excited to introduce this final session, which is titled Educating the Consumer, How Zoos Engage the Public and Companies. And before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping for everybody. All of you are in listen-only mode, so only myself and the panelists will be able to be seen and heard. However, we really do want to hear from all of you as well during the entire session. So throughout the session, please type your questions into the questions box that you can see on the right side of your panel. We'll ask as many questions as we can during the session, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the panel in which we can try to get to as many questions as we can as well. Please make sure you write to us whether the question is for any of the individuals or for the panel as a whole also. Although this panel was originally intended to take place during our in-person conference, actually at Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, for obvious reasons, we're joining you from all around the world, so please bear with us if there are any technical challenges. So with that, I'd like to kick off this final session, and today I will actually be serving as the moderator, which I decided to do because this is a particularly relevant session for me, because as a young child, my local zoo is actually where I first learned about the issues around unsustainable palm oil production and the challenges and issues caused by unsustainable production of palm oil. So this was the inspiration that led me into my career in global sustainability, in which I've served in various roles with international development organizations in Asia, Africa, Latin America, always with a focus on environmental justice issues. And now in my current role as the US representative for the RSPO, my time at the zoo as a child has come completely full circle because I'm now privileged enough to work with zoos that work to inspire their visitors as well as companies to take action towards a more sustainable, ethical, and just world. And I'm honored today to be joined by 3 representatives of some incredible zoos as well that are doing this work, and would like to start out by having them introduce themselves today. So Shervin, if you can start out and introduce yourself a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Cameron, and thank you for hosting us, and thank you to all the attendees who joined us today. I'm Shervin Hess. I work at the Oregon Zoo, and in my role here, I oversee digital media and wildlife advocacy efforts. on issues ranging from palm oil to climate change.
Great, thank you. And Tracey.
My name is Tracey Gazibara. I'm from the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. I'm the VP of Development and Marketing, and often I get asked, how did I get involved in palm oil? Well, I've been with the zoo 19 years, but about 10 years ago, I joined the palm oil team. We had a committee here, and I've been working on palm oil ever since. And so I'm very passionate about it, and I look forward to sharing what we're doing here at the zoo with you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Suzanne.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Hall. I'm a conservation policy specialist with San Diego Zoo Global out in California. I've been working on the issue of palm oil for about 9 years and came to it because I have a particular interest in the threat posed by deforestation to species on the brink of extinction.
Great. Thank you. And again, thank you all of you for joining us. And Shervin, we'll start with you. I mean, I've had the privilege myself of visiting each of your zoos. They're all really incredible. A lot of us know and love our local zoos as well. And at this point of the conference, we've heard from investors, from growers, from consumer goods manufacturers. But although a lot of us might be familiar with our local zoos and maybe your zoos as well, not too many people might be familiar with the role you play in palm oil. So what does a zoo have to do with palm oil, and what role can zoos play to further impact this issue?
Yeah, thank you. So Oregon Zoo is a conservation organization. We exist to create a better future for wildlife, and we do that through direct conservation here in the Pacific Northwest and in other parts of the world. But as a zoo, we're in a unique position to inspire our community to take action. Elephants, orangutans, and tigers are some of the most popular animals here at the Oregon Zoo, and they also happen to be some of the species that are most impacted by palm oil, by the unsustainable production of palm oil. When people come here and they grow to love these animals and make emotional connections with these animals, they always ask the question, what is it that we can do to help? And so we try to provide an answer to that question between storytelling, engaging companies and inspiring our community to engage with those companies and promoting other actions like Cheyenne Mountain Zoo's app. We're able to shift the conversation on palm oil and inspire people to make a positive difference for the animals that they love.
Thank you. Perfect transition to you, Tracey. We just heard a little bit about the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo app, but with that, if you can explain a little bit more about that, and also just your take as well, and what role do zoos have to play in palm oil? Why are zoos even engaged in this issue?
Well, just like Shervin mentioned, we care about saving species. And here at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, we have orangutans, and they're very popular as well. And we work hard to connect our guests to those animals and then inspire them to want to help save their wild counterparts. So Cheyenne Mountain Zoo got involved in palm oil 10 years ago to do just that. And the app that Cameron talked about, in 2014, we created a sustainable palm oil shopping app. And it's really so we can give that action point so our guests or consumers, either way you want to look at it, have a way of making a difference, and they feel good because they've helped save species. The app lists all RSPO member companies, and it rates them depending on where they are in their journey towards sustainable palm oil. It's interactive, so consumers can actually send letters to companies thanking them for the work they're doing, or also asking companies to maybe step it up a little bit and do a little bit more so they can earn that highest rating in our app. So with that over 800,000 guests a year here, and I know that's small compared to San Diego and some other zoos, but we're really proud to be able to educate those consumers to make a difference for wildlife.
Thank you. And Suzanne, we just heard a little bit about your zoo and how incredibly popular the global zoo, the San Diego Global Zoo is, but many might not know the role that you're playing in conservation issues or palm oil as well. So can you please elaborate a little bit about why you're engaged in palm oil with the San Diego Global Zoo and why you think it's an important role for zoos to play?
Well, I think in general, zoos are not just menageries anymore. We really are conservation entities. And, in our case, San Diego Zoo Global has one of the largest zoo-based conservation research teams in the world, with over 200 staff members focused on the scientific pursuit of conservation questions. And palm oil is a critical component in the discussion about deforestation as a threat to species. So, and not just deforestation in terms of habitat loss, but also in terms of climate change. So, we have a really robust conservation research program on polar bears, which you don't usually hear polar bears in the same breath as palm oil, but they are interrelated when you're talking about climate change. So, because palm oil is implicated, the unsustainable development of palm oil is implicated in a number of different significant conservation threats. Our organization and zoos around the globe are paying more attention to it. So that's why, we have the consumer engagement side of the question as well, as you heard Tracey and Shervin discuss, but there's also just, from the conservation perspective, the actual conservation threat, addressing it in whatever way possible. That's part of why we're involved.
All right, and Suzanne, sticking with you, through a lot of this conference, we've heard a lot of pretty broad conversations around different things people can do around palm oil, but specifically, it's interesting for a lot of people that zoos are actually even a member of the RSPO. So can you expand a little bit about why you're an RSPO member as the zoo and what you do as an RSPO member?
Yeah, San Diego Zoo Global joined the RSPO in February 2013. So we've been longtime members, although we are not the first North American zoo to join. You'll have to talk to Tracey about that honor. Cheyenne Mountain Zoo was the first. But we've been working on the issue internally for a couple of years, trying to figure out what was the right way to go in addressing the unsustainable palm oil development, specifically in Southeast Asia at the time. And, way back when we joined, just before we joined, there was a lot of dialogue about what is the right approach. Is a boycott of palm oil the right approach? Or is getting on board with the RSPO the right approach? So we had to do a lot of internal research, a lot of connecting to folks like Tracey and folks at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. We did some ground truthing on the ground in Southeast Asia to understand the issue better, and not just from this remote location here in San Diego that I'm sitting in. And we came to the conclusion ultimately that joining the RSPO was an important step in trying to transform the palm oil industry to a sustainable industry. And we at San Diego Zoo Global have really focused on working from within the RSPO, strengthening its credibility, informing folks who visit our facilities about the RSPO and its role. And we don't shy away from, while we tell the success stories of the RSPO, we also talk about the flaws and how we're working internally with other stakeholders in the RSPO to remedy those flaws, to improve the process. We certainly don't sugarcoat anything. But we work internally by attending all the big meetings, by voting in the General Assemblies. I've been a member of the complaints panel for a couple of years to work on that aspect of addressing bad actors within the organization. So, there's a number of internal strategies we've utilized to help strengthen the RSPO and help it do its job more effectively.
Great. And Tracey, we just heard that Cheyenne Mountain Zoo was the first member. So what led Cheyenne Mountain Zoo to join the RSPO, and what role do you think zoos can play as RSPO members, expanding on what Suzanne had said?
Okay, so in 2007, an animal care manager went to our CEO and basically said, I'm really concerned about this palm oil thing I'm hearing about. She didn't know a lot about it at the time. So a committee was formed and we started researching and trying to understand what was going on. And I'll be real honest, in the very beginning, we were basically boycotting palm oil without using the word. On our website, we had products that were palm oil free. Now we're much more educated, and they probably weren't because palm oil has so many different names and derivatives, but we thought we knew what we were doing. So we started hearing some back and forth about whether boycotting was the answer or was it the answer. And so we decided to take a trip to Indonesia and Malaysia for about 3 weeks. To make a really long story short, we had 28 different meetings in that time, anywhere from the CEO of Musimas to a village chief. And we ended our meetings in Jakarta with an RSPO representative. And we spent about 2 hours with him, and we learned all about what the RSPO was trying to do. So we took all that information, we went home, and we decided, you know what, right now the RSPO is the only organization working towards sustainable palm oil. And from all the information we gathered, we knew palm oil wasn't going away. So the best thing would be is to make it sustainable. And so what roles can zoos play? We joined, and the reason why is because, again, we have a lot of consumers that come to our zoos year round. The World Association, all zoos worldwide, over 800 million consumers, guests. And so we have the ability to reach a lot of people about conservation concerns, as Suzanne was mentioning. And so we thought it would be good to get involved, to learn more, and then also a lot of the same of what Suzanne mentioned. We wanted to work within the RSPO to help strengthen it. Be there to vote, to encourage changing in principles and criteria. And I think that we have played a role. I've recently become a member of the Market Development Committee that I'm excited about to be a part of. And I think we just keep working hard to educate our guests to use an app and show companies that sustainable palm oil is what they want in their products.
Right, thank you. And Shervin, we just heard that there's obviously a lot of debate around this for a lot of people, but also for a lot of zoos. So what led Oregon Zoo to become an RSPO member, and how do you engage with the RSPO?
Yeah, similar to Tracey and Suzanne, we had a long journey that took us to finally becoming a member. Similarly, you know, in the early stages, our messaging tended to be more avoid as opposed to changing the industry. Because we're both a conservation organization and a venue, a community gathering space, it was also especially important for us to walk the talk when it comes to sustainability issues that we message about, whether that be palm oil or anything else. We sometimes hear from visitors saying, you know, I saw your signs about palm oil in front of orangutans, but then I see your vending machine is full of products that contain palm oil. So where are you at on this? We want the industry to evolve, and we want our community to play a role in that. And ultimately, we decided that RSPO is the best existing path forward. We also recognize that RSPO needs continuous improvement, and that we could play an active role in that by having a seat at the table as a voting member. So we know that no one stakeholder can solve this issue. It has to be this combined effort. And we wanted to show our community that we're also playing an active role.
Great, yeah, and there are a lot of zoos, and these aren't the only 3 zoos involved. And we're very excited to have a lot of the zoos helping to push the organization forward and push this mission. And you've all mentioned a little bit about consumers. Shervin, you had mentioned that the consumers or the public have very emotional attachments to a lot of the wildlife that's affected by unsustainable palm oil. And Tracey, I wanted to ask you, we just heard a little bit about what Cheyenne Mountain Zoo does to engage consumers through the app. But overall, consumers might feel this is an issue a little bit too big for them to actually make an impact on. So how do you, at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, and then the rest of you as well, how do you engage consumers to want to actively play a role in issues like sustainable palm oil that might seem a little bit too big for them to make an impact in?
It is it's a very difficult story sometimes, but we have found a lot of different ways to really connect people to the story. At the zoo, we do keeper talks. that twice a day, and they talk to our guests about what they can do to help. What we've found, and I'm sure all zoos find this, you know, your guests really want to make a difference. They don't want to hear a sad story that they can't do anything about. So you need to give them those tools and empower them to feel good about saving species and knowing that they're making a difference. So we do that through those keyword talks, ask them to download the app. In our primate world, we also have an area where we have petition letters, and they can sign them, and it's asking companies to join the RSPO and start their journey towards certified sustainable palm oil. We have coloring sheets for kids. We take all these things and we send them to the companies, hundreds during the year. And it makes them feel like they made a difference. Again, there was an action they could take. We have a mock grocery store in our primate world as well. And they can download the app and test it and look at what those results are. We have infographics and different, just regular graphics. People learn in all different ways. They get inspired all different ways. So we're trying all these different things to see which ones, and probably a little bit of all, that can reach people and really inspire them to continue taking those steps and actions to speak as a consumer. And in this situation in palm oil, all they have to do is buy the right products from companies that are members of the RSPO and working towards that sustainable palm oil. And that's an easy thing for them to do and be a part of.
And I can definitely attest to that. We've heard companies approach the RSPO saying they've received a lot of letters from children, so it does make an impact and companies do listen. And Suzanne, building on that, how do you see consumers playing a role, and what role does the San Diego Zoo play to engage consumers in this role?
Well, voting with the dollar is a very powerful way to instigate change, and that's really where consumers come in. You know, they have the power to drive the behavior of the industry with their pocketbooks. And so I feel, you know, as Tracey was suggesting, you know, it's our job as zoos to interpret this palm oil issue for those consumers so that they can make wise choices and help move the industry. The discussion around palm oil is very complex. It's not an easy topic to cover in a 60-second soundbite. There, you know, everything from smallholders to workers' rights to now jurisdictional approaches. You know, there's so many different aspects of the industry that the vast majority of our consumers don't really have the time to take the deep dive into to really understand what's going on. They want to come to our facilities. They want to learn a bit about the issue. They want to learn what they can do to solve a problem. It's our job to do that deep dive and make those recommendations for them. So that's really where I feel we come in with respect to communicating to the consumer. It's our responsibility to understand these issues and to engage in a very meaningful way with players in the industry so that we have a complete picture of what's going on so that we can talk intelligently to our guests about the palm oil conservation crisis and how they can participate in solving that.
And Shervin, what can you add to that? How this is a huge issue. What role can consumers play in this issue?
Yeah, I can't add much to that because I think Tracey and Suzanne both summarized it really well. I mean, in order to affect change, consumers need to be informed on the issue. They need to know that there are solutions in order to be motivated to take action. If one of the goals is for the palm oil industry to responsibly coexist with wildlife, we need consumers to shift the industry towards certified sustainable. We know that consumers have the power to change the way companies do business. We know that consumers are demanding more sustainable products. And I mean, it's like Suzanne said, it's a complicated issue. It's compared to something like dolphin safe tuna. There's a lot of very well-meaning, but perhaps misinformed people who see it as a black and white issue and advocate for a boycott as a way to help wildlife. And this is a critical area for zoos where we can help consumers make a difference by shifting that conversation and sort of directing them to for more meaningful action.
And that actually leads in perfectly well into, we have a question from the audience, and a reminder to the audience, please feel free to type some questions in the question box and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But somebody from the audience brought up that, as you just mentioned, Shervin, that this is a very complicated and nuanced conversation. And as consumers and citizens, we have so many different issues that we're constantly worried about and trying to focus on and find out how we can impact change. So how do you introduce this topic of palm oil in either your keeper chats or other ways that you're working to educate your visitors? How do you introduce such a complicated conservation topic that can often lead to people just kind of shutting down and feeling like it's too much for them to take on?
Are you asking anyone else?
Sure. How do you dilute such a convoluted topic to your audience, to your visitors?
I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of a lot of the animal care staff, other staff and volunteers who are at the front line having these conversations with visitors. I'm not there. I've been party to some of that. And I think the answer is always having some action that people can take there, so that you're not, there's so much doom and gloom in conservation. It's just part of the deal. But when you're telling these stories, I think making sure that there's that kernel of hope in there and following up with a way where somebody can be proactive and actually keep the pedal on the gas and keep the industry moving in the right direction. I think that's where you can give people agency. You can empower people to, once they've heard the story about what's happening to one of their favorite animals, a way that they can actually do something, even though they may be on the other side of the world.
And Suzanne, to you, if you can build on that, how does your zoo educate the public about palm oil and other conservation issues?
Well, we do a lot of the same things that Shervin was just talking about, keeper talks, and we have signage throughout our facilities that at various key points, like the orangutan exhibit and the tiger exhibit, species that are impacted by palm oil. But we, as an organization, we don't have as much of a forward face on this issue as some of the other zoos like Cheyenne Mountain or Oregon Zoo might have. We tend to work more behind the scenes and internally, and not just with respect to being inside the RSPO with the complaints panel, as I mentioned earlier, but we work with coalitions of zoos behind the scenes. We worked with Cheyenne Mountain Zoo and a few others to help craft the first sustainable palm oil position statement for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums in North America. We work with the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, WAZA, in a subgroup that's focusing on how to mobilize zoos internationally to address this issue. We have a close partnership with folks at the Chester Zoo in the UK, where we are in touch frequently about ways we can work together on palm oil. So we tend to work behind the scenes, mobilizing other folks, educating, helping to support their sustainable palm oil journeys. That really tends to be our focus.
Thank you. And Tracey, if you can elaborate a little bit more on the work that Cheyenne Mountain Zoo does to educate the public on such complicated issues.
Okay. To be really specific on a keeper talk, because it's always hard to say the right thing at the right time, but one of the easiest things they do is say, do you want to help save an orangutan today? And then they say, you can do it by the products you purchase. So just starting at a really high level and then explaining about non-sustainable palm oil versus sustainable palm oil and what the differences are and what we're doing to help make sure that palm oil is sustainable versus non-sustainable. So we definitely stay at a very high level. We have created a palm oil toolkit that is available on our website to anyone who wants to use it. There's all different templates in it, all different ways to interact with your guests. We have graphics and infographics, everything that we use at the zoo and more that we would love to share with anybody who wants to use those tools at their own zoos or aquariums or organizations that's working on these same issues. So I would welcome people to take a look at that. We also, again, I've already kind of mentioned about on-site, what we do with letters and having people make phone calls even. We say connect to those companies that are not members of the RSPO, something we stress all the time. Ask them to join. And then what you want to ask for is certified sustainable palm oil. So in order to really communicate with those guests on that short period of time, you really need to say very high level what the issue is, and then what they can do about it. Like Shervin mentioned, they want to be able to be empowered to make a difference.
And Shervin, building off that, we just got a great question from the audience. Can you elaborate on why you don't think a boycott is the correct answer?
Yeah, it's an easy answer, and I think that's what makes it so attractive to so many people who love wildlife. And boycotting is obviously, it's a legitimate expression of people's concerns. But I mean, we stand with the broader conservation community in arguing that a boycott actually offers no incentive to the palm oil industry to transform. And that palm oil as a crop is actually a very efficient crop and could potentially be replaced by something more detrimental to the landscape. And there's also a nuance in there that I think that gets missed a lot of the time. We want to address all these drivers of deforestation, and timber, beef, and soy are all driving more deforestation than palm oil. Palm oil happens to be the one crop that we're not growing in the United States, so it kind of makes it easy to pick on. Nobody could imagine boycotting all of those things going away. I think we need to embrace the fact that in order for us to support all these life systems on the planet, we need to find sustainable ways moving forward.
And Suzanne, anything to add to that on why you don't support a boycott, or why you don't think that would be as effective?
Well, I think Shervin hit on some of the very important points of what I always tell people is, okay, if you're going to boycott palm oil, what are you replacing it with? And is that sustainable? I think consumers don't really realize how the dominoes lay out, and how it's really, like Shervin said, a big picture thing. Everything needs to become sustainable for us all to survive on this planet, and for the species we're trying to protect as zoological institutions. Another important point, though, for the average consumer is sometimes palm oil exists in products in very, very tiny quantities and under names on a label that you might not even recognize as palm oil. And it can be very difficult, again, for consumers to identify those products on a label. They're just as they might not take deep dives into the palm oil issue or other issues. They're not necessarily studying the product lists on the labels in the supermarket either. People have only so much time. So it's important to take a broader sustainability approach, because there are so many loopholes that you might not be paying attention to that sort of undercut your intent if you're not looking at it from the sustainability perspective.
Yeah, and it's quick plug for the North America Sustainable Palm Oil Network. We are currently working on a list of all the ingredients that commonly contain or might contain palm oil or very similar oils grown in the same exact regions of the world. And we're up to about 600 ingredients under a lot of different names. So a pretty wide list that we're going to be releasing in about a month or so. But Tracey, adding to that, anything you have to add about why you don't think boycotting would be the best answer towards sustainability?
Gosh, Shervin and Suzanne said most of everything that I would have said. Palm oil being 4 to 10 times more productive than any other oil. So just like Suzanne said, what would you replace it with that's any better than that? Also, I guess I would say the economies of the countries that are growing palm oil. Indonesia, Malaysia, of course, the biggest growers, and there's millions of people that their livelihoods depend on it. And so there's got to be a way to work that all together and become sustainable. It's a good crop. It's just making it sustainable.
Yeah, and often a lot of what we've said and what my colleague Dan Stretcher has said is that it's a human caused problem. It's not the crop itself. Human caused problems, so they're a human caused solution. So building off of that as well, we talked a lot about the consumers' roles in all of this, but ultimately we as consumers and citizens, we can only do so much. So we really do ultimately need companies and supply chain actors to take some action. So how do you view North American-based companies playing a role in sustainable palm oil production? And how does your zoo engage with companies? I know we've heard a little bit, but maybe starting with you, Shervin, can you elaborate a little bit on how Oregon Zoo engages with companies, or how you think companies can play a role in this?
Right. Well, it's the consumer brands that have a lot of power to actually transform the industry. We focus on empowering our community to engage with companies. So we really are build, all this work is off the shoulders of what Tracey and the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo have been doing for so many years. This model of kind of creating a bridge between the consumers and the companies. So we've done this by organizing with the broader NGO community to maximize and expand our reach. We have in the past worked with companies to amplify their successes, as well as working with them to push them in the right direction to make progress. We can also use the zoo's own purchasing power to make change in the vending and food service providers we contract with. And lastly, kind of a new thing for us is engaging with our elected officials to explore how we can advance deforestation-free sourcing on the state and federal level. So, and again, this is not just for palm oil, but for timber, beef, soy, and all the drivers of deforestation.
And Tracey, we've heard a little bit about your engagement, but can you elaborate a little bit more on why you think companies are such an important player in this, and what other zoos can do, or what we can all do to help push companies to make an impact?
Well, we need companies, if they're not already members of the RSPO, to become members. We have an uptake problem. So we have certified sustainable palm oil, but it's not being purchased. And until companies start purchasing physical certified sustainable palm oil, like all of their sourcing, then we have a problem with other companies saying, why should I do all that work to be sustainable if no one's going to buy it anyway? So I think it's a really important message too to the consumer. If the consumer is not pushing companies to do the right thing, then we can't keep moving forward. So although we do have our guests trying to get them engaged with companies, the other ways we do as well is we send emails, we make phone calls, and just see if we can start a dialogue with them. Some of our local companies here in town, some candy companies and different things, and then also some larger ones. Some are willing to engage and some aren't. If they're not willing to engage that way, sometimes we go the letter route and we start sending letters from our guests. And coloring cheese from kids really get them because it's an orangutan. So I highly recommend it. But I think what companies in North America need to do is purchase certified sustainable palm oil, physical certified sustainable palm oil, so we can continue increasing the uptake.
Suzanne, anything to add to that?
Well, again, we tend to have a more behind the scenes approach to addressing this issue. And I can tell you that we have had a couple of big name companies, international companies that we have engaged personally and privately to talk about this issue, because they maybe are not RSPO members, and we are trying to push them in that direction. So we have had several opportunities where we have conversations deliberately about their product line, about their options to support biodiversity and slow deforestation. So we take that sort of behind the scenes approach. I really enjoyed yesterday listening to one of the seminars. You had a representative from McDonald's talking about how it's just critical for companies to really clean up their supply chains and that it's doable and everybody needs to do this. I really appreciate hearing that from industry folks because, you know, if there's pressure from inside the industry and pressure from folks like us, you know, I think, you know, when people are hearing it, when corporates are hearing it from within and without, you know, there's an opportunity for change.
Thank you. And we just got another great question from the audience, and I don't want to put any one of you on the spot, but if any of you are willing to answer this, and I know a few of you have mentioned the need for the RSPO to continue to grow and increase its ability to make a positive influence, but all of you have expressed a lot of faith in the RSPO and what the RSPO is working towards. But the audience member had a question about being a little bit skeptical of it being a perfect solution or a silver bullet for everything. So are any of you willing to discuss a little bit about the idea of RSPO as a silver bullet, or what do companies need to do beyond the RSPO to actually lead to some impact in these regions?
So I'll jump in if you don't mind. It's not a silver bullet and it's not perfect. I sit on a complaints panel for the RSPO. If it was perfect, we wouldn't need a complaints panel. And I can tell you, you know, I can't go into detail about any of the cases we discuss, but you know, there is a lot of deliberation and there's a lot of fact finding and there is a lot of trying to get to the truth whenever there is something brought before the complaints panel. We take our job very seriously. And the reason we do is because we believe in the RSPO. The RSPO is not going to function well if it's not willing to look at itself and its members and call people to the carpet when they overstep the rules, the principles and criteria. And I think the RSPO takes that responsibility very seriously. So do I think it's perfect? But do I think it's better than anything out there? Yeah. And I also think the RSPO today is stronger and better than it was 10 years ago. So the object here, from my perspective, is keep helping the organization, the RSPO itself, improve, get stronger, make more change, greater impact. And we can only do that if we're actually engaging with the RSPO and its members and stakeholders. If we, again, it's kind of like boycotting. If you wipe your hands of it, you're not going to have any power to make change with the members of the RSPO. So it is, in my opinion, the very best mechanism out there today to address sustainability in the palm oil marketplace. And because of that, I want to be right there on board with helping to make it better, stronger, and more efficient over time.
Shervin, I see you nodding. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, what Suzanne said, but also that, you know, I mean, through the lens of how we communicate this to our community who may be skeptical about RSPO, may know something about it, but not sure, and are also looking for solutions. I mean, this is it being the best mechanism for transforming the industry. This is an opinion we share with the broader conservation community. This is the opinion of many biologists, scientists working on the ground on these issues in these countries, or from these countries as well. And it's really a matter of, are we going to proactively do something about this, or are we going to, you know, tune to something like boycotting, which we know is not going to be effective. So it's really how do we shift that conversation with our audience, knowing that it's far from perfect, and it requires the pressure of all these stakeholders, you know, especially the NGOs, the social and environmental NGOs, to improve it, to improve the principles and criteria, and ultimately for us to find better ways for the industry to coexist with wildlife.
And Tracey, final question to you, kind of building on that. Can consumers and the general public engage as well in making the RSPO better?
Can the consumers, I'm sorry, say it one more time, consumers and who?
Yeah, we have an audience member ask whether consumers, we've just learned about how zoos and companies can help to make the RSPO better and push it forward. Is there a way that consumers or the general public can also help to improve the RSPO?
Well, I would say first learn about the RSPO. Unfortunately, as Suzanne mentioned, it was difficult in the beginning, and they've gotten better in 10 years, but RSPO has gotten better in 5 years, and hopefully it'll be even better in another 5 years. So I think often there's negativity in the media because they love drama, more so than when the RSPO does something well. And so consumers often think that the RSPO must not be a good organization. So again, it comes back to us, I think, a lot of it when it comes to zoos and aquariums, because we have that ability to educate consumers about what the RSPO really does and what it has done and what hopefully it will continue to do even better. I don't have a better answer for consumers directly involved with the RSPO.
I think it's a great answer, and a lot of what you had mentioned, supporting certain companies, writing letters to companies, things like that can help to increase membership of the RSPO and push companies to continue contributing as well.
Cameron?
Yeah.
I just want to say that the single most important thing that any consumer can do to support the RSPO is to purchase products made with certified sustainable palm oil. Because as I think it was Shervin mentioned early on, we need to incentivize folks within the RSPO to keep on the path, and we need to incentivize other corporates to get involved with sustainable palm oil. So the biggest incentive for that is to purchase certified sustainable palm oil. Put your money there.
Thank you. And with that, we'll wrap up here. Starting with you, Shervin, what's the last thing you want to leave the audience with, whether it's something that's inspired you to stay engaged in these issues that are very complicated, or just anything that you want the audience to take away today? And you're muted right now, Shervin.
Sorry.
There we go.
I think it's really, it's this pivotal time when we need to be shifting this conversation from boycott to support sustainable. And I know we've been talking a lot about that today. And it's helping the consumer understand, what does that actually mean? What does sustainable mean? What does that mean for wildlife? On this last trip to Saba that I took, I got to see firsthand plantations reaching out because they wanted to do better for wildlife. I saw elephant herds traveling through mixed landscapes and through corridors. It's up to us to really be communicating to the public, what does sustainable palm oil look like, and so that they'll have faith in the RSPO and that this mechanism actually works. And right now, you know, we all want to protect and responsibly manage the tropical forests that support life on the planet. And if our voices are united on this, we can bring about a transformation. So I guess my last thing is that right now, more than ever, in this especially during this COVID time when resources are scarce, it's so critical that NGOs, consumer goods, and the zoo community collaborate to really bring about this positive change.
And Suzanne, any last thing you would like to leave for the audience? Anything inspiring or something that keeps you moving?
Well, I'm inspired by how much change has already occurred, which is not to say there isn't still a long way to go, but where we were when, when I first started looking at this issue to compared to where we are now as a global community, I feel like so much change has already happened. And when I first started working in palm oil, as I mentioned, we were the second zoo to join the RSPO. Most zoological facilities were afraid of this issue. They did not know how to answer this difficult question of what to do about the palm oil conservation crisis, because it is so complex. And I think today, more and more, I feel like organizations, zoological institutions, and even aquarium are better informed. They're more knowledgeable. They're more connected to the issue. They feel like they have a voice. They know what to do. And if they don't know what to do, there are lots of folks around them that can help them come up to speed. So I'm inspired by how connected the zoological community is on this issue and how we support each other and how we've grown as an organization, a group of organizations, towards being impactful and making change.
And Tracey, last word to you.
What inspires me is going to Indonesia and Malaysia and seeing the forests and seeing the animals. Every time I see an orangutan, it's like seeing it for the first time. And that really makes me think about what we're losing or what we could lose or what we might continue to lose. And that propels me to keep working hard and really trying to further our mission of saving critically endangered animals. The one takeaway that I've already said it, and I think everybody has said it too, but it's that consumer piece. And download the app; it's free. Start engaging with companies. Send emails, send letters. Increase that uptake of certified sustainable palm oil, and really tell companies that aren't RSPO member that that's what you want them to do. You need them to use that certified sustainable palm oil. So that's what I would say to do.
All right, well, thank you to all of you for joining me on this panel. This has been very inspiring for me. And again, childhood me at the zoo. Shout out to Bess from the Phoenix Zoo, the oldest resident of the Phoenix Zoo, an orangutan there that actually got me into all this. But childhood me would be very excited to know that I'm getting to moderate a panel with some amazing people from zoos doing some really great work. So thank you, all of you, for joining us for this, and thank you for the very critical work that you do as well. And thank you to all of you attendees for joining us today and participating in this entire virtual conference over the last 3 days. All of these panels have been recorded. We'll make sure to share them with all of you afterwards as well for viewing and for you to share widely also. But again, thank you everyone for making this virtual conference successful and an engaging platform for all of us to discuss these very important, relevant issues. And all of us have very vital and important roles to play as all the panelists discussed today. So I really hope that this dialogue inspired some additional conversations between all of you, your organizations, and ultimately, I hope it really inspired a lot of urgent actions for everybody to take, because we really need to take some urgent actions to solve a lot of these issues. We can only do it together. So thank you all of you very much for joining us today. And I really hope all of you can stay safe, and thank you for joining us for this session.